What is with everybody wanting to change the playoffs? First it was baseball, now it is the NFL. Welcome everyone to another video. I am Frank Gugino and this is Frank About Sports. So, football has now come out and said that they are potentially looking at changing the playoffs, and it could come as soon as this year, as the main thing they're looking to do is add another playoff team for each conference to increase it to 7 teams from both conferences. What that would do is it would add another game. It would change the whole idea of a first round bye for the first 2 seeds because they would be an extra seed. So it definitely would be another wrinkle into football. And for some fan bases, I could understand why you would want that. I'm not trying to, personally call any fan base out, but the Dallas Cowboys, they definitely would be a fan of that because of all their 8-8, 7-9, 9-7 seasons that they've had, where they're always just missing the playoffs. They're always right there knocking on the door, but there's nobody to open that playoff door for them. In this new format, there's a much better chance they would have made the playoffs. In fact, just this season as an example, the Dallas Cowboys would have been that extra seed because all year they had been fighting out with the Philadelphia Eagles for that coveted division. When you only have those couple wild card spots, I mean, I really think that adding a 7th team, I kind of feel like that's being a little too generous. In a previous video, I said how Major League Baseball is also considering adding more playoff teams to where if you had an under 500 record, you could still be in the postseason. Now, as an old school baseball fan, not a big fan of that. The thing that I like about the baseball playoffs is that you have to be one of the very best in order to make the playoffs. It's very hard to sneak in. You need close to 90 wins. And for the most part, you need to try to win your division because then you find yourself in a one-game wild card scenario, which I personally have loved. I think this one-game thing has really made a big difference for baseball. When making the playoffs is easier to do, you're willing to have more teams want to compete instead of just tanking and putting a season away. So I think that has helped baseball a little bit. You think of just the Mets this season with the way they had talked about that wild card spot all year, but had it not been for that second wild card spot, the Mets, they probably would have traded off even more contracts, and there really wouldn't have been any compelling baseball. Nothing to really talk about, no playoff dreams to really have. Even though the Mets did not make it, we still talked about the whole second half of the season because of how well they ended up playing and how close they were to making it. So it's just very interesting that all of a sudden we're seeing all these different potential playoff changes. And, baseball, they talked about their format, which, again, I didn't like, being under 500 record. I don't like the selecting the opponents. You're really changing the game too much. If you looked at the sport of baseball and you said, okay, well, what is the problem here? You'd be like, oh, well, you know what? Only if the teams could choose their playoff opponents and it was on TV and it became a reality TV show, that would really change the game of baseball and get attendance up and get TV ratings up. I really don't think that is the problem that they have been facing. The thing I personally don't like when watching these games is the replays, and the thing about the replays is how long they take, because they'll be on a particular play and they'll be looking at it for over 5 minutes, and I think you have to put a timer of some sort to prevent these kind of things from happening, because that's what really extending the game. Also, the idea of changing the pitchers and always having to go to a commercial break, that is another thing that really has extended games. And I feel like if you have to constantly go to a commercial break, it just makes the game drag on so much. I think one thing baseball can institute, which we're starting to see in these other sports a little bit, is the split screen. And I think that when the reliever is coming to the mound and taking their warm-up pitches, you can have that split screen with a commercial. And I just think as long as I'm seeing something baseball related, I'll be okay, because sometimes I just can't sit through that many commercials. It just makes it very tough to watch because, you know what, I put the Met game on to see the Mets. I didn't put it on to see any commercials. I have no interest in them at all. You know what I mean? That's just the way I look at it, because I am a sports fan, not a commercials fan. This is a YouTube channel about sports, not about commercials. So that is just the way that I personally view it. But I don't think that being able to select the playoff opponents, oh my gosh, no, you got my interest now. If anything, you've kind of changed my interest, and I think this has been such a strange offseason for baseball with obviously the Astros thing, which, I mean, I understand that it was a big story at first when this whole scandal came out that they were stealing signs and using technology to their advantage, and it really was unethical. I can't believe that as we sit here, almost as spring training is about to start, the very first games are happening this weekend, we are still talking about the Houston Astros, and there was this theory out there that they could have been wearing buzzers, which could be possible, and I think that if it is true, it may be a while before we know, because if it is, it's going to be a huge problem because baseball never said that in their report. If you watch the press conference that Jim Crane or Altuve or all these other Astros that they've had, they've all said, oh, well, according to the commissioner's report, according to the report, when you look at the report, it says this. That's all they have fallen back on. They go to the report for every single question that they get. And because the buzzers weren't in the report, they can't say anything about it. They'd be like, oh, well, they did an investigation. It was not there. That's what Hinch said. That's what Crane said. So that is what the Astros are falling back on. And it would mean that there's two problems that if they discover the buzzers, it looks really bad for baseball. Number one, obviously they cheated more than we'd ever known. Number two, Manfred could have lied, which really would not have been good. If Manfred knew that the buzzers were a thing but didn't want to expose it because it would have looked even worse, he's trying to cover it up. But also, maybe the buzzer thing is real, but Manfred never found out because baseball just didn't do a good enough job investigating it. That's also a big issue. So, I mean, they really have to hope that there is no buzzers, because if there is, I just think that's going to make baseball look really bad, because obviously they've had their cheating scandals in the past. You think of steroids or the Black Sox scandal or Pete Rose. I mean, they've had their fair share of issues. But we still love the game of baseball. It is not perfect, just like people aren't perfect. We still put up with them, even though they may make mistakes and do some weird things. But I don't think that, this playoff format is the big answer. And for the Yankees, with Judge complaining, and you think about Gary Sanchez saying, oh, you can take my shirt off, my pants off, you'll never see a buzzer, what have you. Then Bellinger's complaining, then Trout's complaining. I mean, everybody is just kicking the dead horse like there's no tomorrow. I mean, they're just going on and on. Everybody has to put their little 2 cents, and then you have to have people like Frank make YouTube videos about it. It really has become tiresome. I have to be honest with you. I'm tired of hearing about it. I want baseball to start. I want to talk about the Met games. I want to talk about the Yankee games. I want to talk about the Astro games or the Red Sox who are rebuilding. Whatever team that is out there, it doesn't matter to me. We could talk about the Dodgers. We could talk about the Oakland A's, the Tampa Bay Rays. I want to talk about their games and what's going on, what moves those teams should make. I don't want to sit here and all the things that we're hearing about is the Astros. The Astros. Are the Astros going to get hit enough? Are they going to retaliate enough? People aren't happy how good the punishment was from Rob Manfred. And now Trevor Bauer is mad at Manfred. All of a sudden, baseball has had so much drama going on, which to some extent is good. It does give people something to talk about, which is always great, but I just feel like it's just overblown. It's really, like I said, they just keep going on and on about it, and I don't really want to talk about it. So let's move on to the next thing. Let's get to more specific teams, and let's get to the Mets. And just a little bit of storylines that have happened in this first week, getting ready for the spring training games, actually being out there. We get to see the players walk on the field. Every day you get those SNY tweets of somebody walking onto the field or making a catch, or Cespedes hitting all these home runs. And he's the guy I really want to focus on about this video for the spring training. Cespedes, with him deciding to decline to talk to the media, I didn't like that, obviously. I mean, you should talk to the media. It's kind of in your job description. It's what all these players have to do. I don't think that Cespedes has deserved the rights where he's like, okay, well, I'm Cespedes, so I don't have to talk to the media because I'm so great. I don't really think that, because we have a lot of questions for him. Where were you the past year and a half? How come all of a sudden, when money is involved, now U.S. Cespedes decides to show up? I think that definitely is something very interesting, and I believe that because Cespedes' money is on the line, he is going to be out there. And one of the things that's been really puzzling to me is that we've seen U.S. Cespedes hit home runs every day now. We saw him running and catching fly balls today, and we've seen him run in general. We've seen him throw. So what is there left for Cespedes to do? He has shown, at least to me in the little videos that I've seen, that he is healthy and that he should be able to participate in spring training games and just play in general. But what we have heard from the Mets, whether it's Brody Van Wagner or Luis Rojas, is there's no timetable. We don't know when he's going to be ready. And it really makes me wonder if that has something to do with coming from up top with the ownership telling Brody and Luis Rojas, try not to have him come back. Don't rush him back, because if you do, then we have to pay him. And we are a team that does not like to spend money. We try to save every dollar we can get. So that is something that I'm concerned about. I really believe that Cespedes should be out there. I don't know what the holdup is, because, again, to me, he does look healthy. And I'm not crazy about him not wanting to speak to the media, but my main thing is I want to see him out there, and more importantly, I want to see him out there and do well and hit home runs and have the Mets win more games, because, like I said earlier, the Mets were a few games away from making the playoff spot, and if Cespedes was out there, he could have given another home run here or there, maybe in a game against the Brewers or the Braves or the Cubs or the Phillies. Mets win a few more games, they're possibly in the wild card game, and you never know what happens from there. So I think that is something that is definitely very important. And what's made me think of is who is going to be the casualty. I think that is something really important to talk about, because if Cespedes is going to be out there and healthy, I feel like he should start. I mean, that would just make sense based on his track record and obviously the money that he's going to get paid and how well I believe he is going to play, because I've said it in an article I wrote recently that a motivated Cespedes is a good Cespedes, and like we know, Cespedes equals wins. So that is definitely very important. Again, you need wins to make the playoffs. So if Cespedes is out there, who do you take out? And it seems like J.D. Davis is the most likely candidate, because obviously you're going to have Ramos behind the plate, Alonso is at first base, you have Cano at second, you have Rosario at short, McNeil at third, Cespedes in left, Nimmo in center, Conforto in right field. I still would like center field to be better, especially defensively. You really need a bounce back year out of Brandon Nimmo. I feel like that's going to be very important for the Mets' success, because, they're going to need some help on offense. And if Brandon Nimmo is potentially going to be a leadoff hitter, he can't be striking out as much as he did when he did originally play in the start of last season, before he had the neck injury after that crash into the wall against the Atlanta Braves. So I think that Brandon Nimmo is definitely going to be someone that we really have to keep an eye out for to make sure that he can get back to his 2018 self, and that was a very productive player. Brandon Nimmo got on base a whole bunch, had an on-base percentage above 400. It was top 5 in the National League. And if you're going to be a leadoff hitter and you're getting on base, that equals really good things for the offense, because it gives a runner on base when Pete Alonso is up, when Jeff McNeil is up, when Cespedes is up, to drive you in and score more runs. And if you score more runs than the other team, you win the game. And again, the Mets needed more wins in order to make the playoffs. That was a really big thing for them. And obviously getting a bounce back out of Familia and Diaz, that would really be the missing ingredient and the cherry on top to really give the Mets a playoff berth. And I hope that they could just stay healthy. And what was so fascinating to me, that Jed Lowrie, he showed up. Oh my gosh, Jed Lowrie is here. But he has a big knee brace on his left leg, the same knee that plagued him last season, where he showed up very late in the year, only had a few pinch hit at bats. He went 0 for 7, and he did not look good at all. And the fact that here we are, he got injured in February of 2019. We're now in February of 2020, and this knee thing is still bothering him. So that definitely is puzzling to me. And that brace that he is wearing is huge. I mean, it's from his knee to pretty much his ankle. So that definitely is a big brace. I don't know how you play the infield, whether it's second base, third base. I really doubt shortstop. Moving around like that, I do think that is problematic. Obviously, the National League does not have a designated hitter yet. So Jed Lowrie's purpose on this team, it's going to be pretty tricky, because the thing about Lowrie is that he is getting paid $10 million. So you're not going to send him to the minor leagues. And I don't know if I've seen him take some ground balls at second base, so that's a little encouraging. But I don't think that he's really going to start that much. At least he better not, because he can't play over Jeff McNeil. And Robinson Cano is definitely going to play, and Cano isn't going to move around anywhere else. So I imagine Jed Lowrie is going to be on the bench, so he's going to get paid $10 million. And what's it going to be? $10 million for a pinch hitter? And if Lowrie isn't even that good of a hitter to begin with, we don't know exactly what Jed Lowrie is as a Met. That still seems like a really bad signing, and it makes sense why it's been so hard to move Jed Lowrie, because he doesn't have much value. I mean, he's an older player. Obviously, he's on the decline, and his body looks like it's breaking down the way this knee thing keeps bothering him. So that is bothering me, that he still is not on the field. It is concerning that Jed Lowrie still does not look 100% and doesn't really look like someone you can rely on, because what if Jed Lowrie finally does play and he actually gets a hit, maybe even a double, and he needs to run to second base, but all of a sudden his knee brace and he's kind of like hobbling out there, limping around, and he can't really make it to second base? That definitely would be a problem. But speaking of health, how about my guy Seth Lugo breaking his pinky toe in his hotel room? I mean, what? That is such a Met injury, and I know from Lugo, from Rojas, all we've seen is no major concern, nothing to worry about. Lugo's going to be okay. He's throwing off flat ground. He's playing catch. All that is great. But I don't know, for some reason with the Mets, I don't trust, and I'm sorry. I am worried. I just know that some little dumb thing like this with the Mets, it could just be this major injury. Lugo's out for the year, or he's never the same, and oh my God, he needs surgery on the pinky. Just, it just seems like such a Met thing. That's something that sounds so minor. Even though a broken toe doesn't sound fun, I have to be honest with you. Just stubbing a toe could be bad. You think of SpongeBob. I mean, he cried for 20 minutes when he stubbed his toe. But still, I just think that I really hope that this Lugo thing is nothing big. I mean, we can't lose somebody like him. because if Familia and Diaz do not bounce back and they pitch like the way they did last year, Lugo is going to become even more important. I mean, he was such a savior for them last season. I mean, he got them out of so many jams. He pitched multiple innings plenty of times and was really the only reliable guy that could lock down a save. I mean, in a really close game, and you need someone to shut the door. Lugo was that guy last year, and he really had to step into that closer role a lot in that second half when the Mets had really important games and they were trying to get those wins to get them into the playoffs. So you really have to hope that Lugo's pinky toe heals up quick and that he could still be the same guy. That's the other thing. Like, it's one thing to be out there on the field, but are you going to be the same player? Is Lugo going to be as good as he has been the past couple years? If Cespedes is back, is he going to be the 2015, even 2016 Cespedes? That's something really important because, like Cano, I mean, he's been out there, but he hasn't been the Robbie Cano that we know, the All-Star, the guy that hit for nearly a 300 average and is a tough out. And every now and then he played a Gold Glove second base. So that's something that is also interesting to me. And speaking of Cespedes and the way he has looked fine and he looks pretty healthy, how about Kevin Durant doing a workout video where he's taking some jump shots and running around a little bit? Kevin Durant looks pretty healthy to me, and I'll tell you what, looks more healthy than Kyrie Irving, who still is out. And, I mean, he has just been a really tough year for him because he's had all these different injuries. It is always something different with Kyrie Irving, whether it is the shoulder, whether it is the knee. I mean, it's just always somewhere. It's personal reasons, you know what I mean? Like, Kyrie Irving has missed a ton of games, and I really hope that he is not out for a long period of time because it would be very, very odd if Kevin Durant came back before Kyrie Irving. I still don't think that's going to happen. I imagine Durant is going to try to take off this whole season, which, I mean, if he wants to, he can. I think that, again, it's more important to be healthy than to be out there because if Kevin Durant does come back and is not the same player, he can get hurt really bad. I mean, that's what happened to him with the Warriors. He had an injury, not the Achilles thing quite yet, but then he comes back, all of a sudden, boom, the Achilles is messed up. So you don't want to find yourself in that kind of predicament again. So for Kevin Durant, I'm perfectly fine with just send him out for the year, be ready for next year, have Kyrie healthy. Maybe you can make some other moves to help this team. Try to continue to develop the younger guys. I've talked about it a lot, but, you know, Spencer Dinwiddie, Karis LeVert, Joe Harris, Jared Allen, have those guys continue to get better. This way they will be ready once Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant are out there and they want to compete. And again, I don't like that Kyrie said the Nets need to make moves. They still have not done anything since that comment from Kyrie Irving. Again, I really believe that they do need a stretch four, another big guy that could really space the floor, or maybe another scorer off the bench, another quality wing that could hit some threes. That's going to be really important because with Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant playing in isolation basketball, they're going to need guys that can hit open shots when they decide to collapse the defense, when they put more bodies on Kyrie or Durant. They're going to need to trust the teammates they have, be willing to make the right pass to the open player and hit the shot. That's going to be extremely important for the Nets. And speaking of the NBA, the way the All-Star Game, they had their changes as well. You know, we talked about rule changes with football and baseball earlier. But the NBA, they obviously made the change to the All-Star Game, the Kobe Bryant Trophy, getting to the 24 points. And it was confusing the whole way through, the way they explained it. I really didn't get it. But like everybody else, you have to be for competition. And I think that is awesome to see that the best of the best were really going at it. You get to see, you know, Anthony Davis have to make a big-time free throw. And you see Kawhi Leonard. I mean, he just continues to emerge as probably the best player in all of basketball, other than Giannis Antetokounmpo and LeBron James and even Anthony Davis. Kawhi Leonard is up there these past couple years. He does it very quietly because he doesn't say a word. But, I mean, between being a two-time Finals MVP, winning a championship on two separate teams, now being the All-Star Game MVP, being Defensive Player of the Year. I mean, Kawhi Leonard, he might win a championship this year, and he would win the championship and probably the Finals MVP on three separate teams. Nobody has ever done that. So Kawhi Leonard has definitely been a really good player. It was nice to see him win that Kobe Bryant Trophy. I know, obviously, he's from California, and the award meant a lot to him like it did for just about any other player out there. But I think as long as you could get competition in the All-Star Game, you have to be all for that because in all these All-Star Games, pretty much, especially the basketball one, there isn't much competition anymore. There isn't really much to play for. So they kind of mess around. They don't really play hard. They're just jacking up threes and doing some fun dunks. It's an exhibition event. It's for entertainment. But I think when you have the best of the best, you really want to see them go at it and find out what these players are made of. And I felt like we definitely saw that in that fourth quarter. So I definitely am a fan of that. But until the next one, which will be the very first Mets spring training game on Saturday, I'm obviously very excited. We're going to see Rick Porcello make his debut, and then Steven Matz on Sunday. So that's going to be really interesting to follow because the Mets, I mean, they have been talking about the final 2 rotation spots, which we know is probably going to be Matz and Porcello anyway. But they have to prove it in spring training because all of a sudden, if Matz isn't good or Porcello isn't good and Waka is, maybe he takes one of their roles. You never know because Luis Rojas, one of the other things before I go, he's been very buttoned up. He hasn't said much. And the way that he wouldn't commit to anyone besides Jake, I thought that was really weird. Like, obviously, you have to commit to Syndergaard or Showman, especially with the way they complain. Like, they need to, be accounted for. So I think with Rojas, it's interesting to see what kind of manager he's going to be. Will he open up a little more and give us some more information? And how will he treat the team? Like, will there be position battles? Will it be if you hit, you play? What if Cano isn't playing well and J.D. Davis is? Are you going to put Davis at third, potentially McNeil at second? We know that J.D. Davis has been working out at third base in this spring training. Gary DiSarcina changing his stance from being squatted down to more of an upright position, be able to get to the ground balls better. So I think that's something we're also going to have to follow. Make sure J.D. Davis can improve at third base because he definitely has some troubling throws there. And having more versatility is going to be very important for him to be in this lineup because, like I said, with the healthy Cespedes, JD is going to be the odd man out. So he has to try to do everything he can to show that he deserves to be in the lineup more often. It's unfortunate because I've written about him and I've raved about him and I've had a complete 360 about him because at the beginning of last season when he was batting cleanup, I was very critical of that. I thought, J.D. Davis has not proven himself. He always done it in the minor leagues. You can't, have a guy be your cleanup hitter based off what he's done in the minors. He has not been good in the majors, and I was very hard on him. I didn't like his defense at third base. I didn't like his offense. But now, obviously, I've turned around with him. He had a great second half. He was one of the best hitters in all of baseball in that second half, especially for the Mets. I love that he's a team first guy. I love that when they do something big, you see him dancing for the team. I thought that was really important. Obviously, he does hit well against lefties, and he got big hits. He had walk-off hits. He had go-ahead hits. So J.D. Davis, he looked like he's definitely an important building block for the future because he's also so young. But for him to be on the bench, I mean, think about it. If you have Dom Smith on the bench and you have J.D. Davis on the bench, you have 2 good bench pieces right there. And like I said, if Jed Lowrie is healthy, he's going to be on the bench. So now all of a sudden the Mets have a decent bench. Then you throw in Rene Rivera. I like Rivera personally, but he's not that good because his defense isn't the best. He's not going to throw out that many runners, especially with Matz and Syndergaard on the mound. He's not going to get any hits. There's nothing for you offensively. He is not a good defensive replacement as far as speed as well because my main thing is I remember earlier in the year when Wilson Ramos, when he would get on base, the Mets never pinch ran for him. And Mickey Callaway had that crazy stat. Oh, well, however much percent of the time, it doesn't matter if the guy had pinch run for and all this craziness. And I just think that now it's going to be even harder to pinch run for Ramos because your other option is Rene Rivera, and you don't have a third catcher. And the guy that I feel like I'm not going to like is Jake Marisnick because he's a guy, I know he's out there for his defense, and the Mets do need that because, like I said, the defense in center field is not spectacular, so that's going to be Marisnick's role. But I just know that Marisnick is not going to provide you anything offensively. And I'm concerned that there are going to be games where Jake Marisnick is the starting center fielder, and probably against lefties since McNeil and Nimmo and Conforto, they're all left-handed hitters. So I imagine when lefties out there with the way the new analytics look at these things, Jake Marisnick is going to start, and he's going to provide nothing for you offensively. And I think that is a big-time problem when you're a pretty inconsistent offense as it is, and you're in the National League. So a lot of things to follow. One thing at a time. I will see you on Saturday after the Mets' first spring training game